On our wedding night, my younger half-sister offered herself to my husband, seeking to become his concubine. I remained utterly unflustered, but my carefully chosen husband panicked. He kicked her away with one swift motion. "You? Not even a dog would want you." Then, turning to me, he began whimpering, "My wife, I'm scared." I could guess what suing would do. Because in my previous life, she too had appeared on my wedding night, clad in a sheer red gown, her tear-filled eyes blurring as she blocked Xiaoyun's path to the bridal chamber, offering herself as a concubine. "I know this is wrong," she'd said, "but I adore your highness. To stay by your side, I'd gladly become your concubine." It wasn't that she truly loved Xiaoyun, she simply relished snatching what was mine. In that past life, Xiaoyun couldn't resist the temptation and spent his wedding night with her. Later, he even sought to divorce me and elevate her to his primary consort. In this new life, even though I avoided her by marrying someone else, she resorted to the same trick, trying to climb into Xiao Shun's bed. When she stopped Xiao Shun, I was hiding behind the rockery nearby. Watching her take a step closer to Xiao Shun, her eyes brimming with tears, she pleaded, "I don't ask for status. Even as a concubine, even if I can only be your servant. I'm willing." She was indeed beautiful. In terms of looks alone, she was undoubtedly the most striking among the Su family. Especially with that pitifully vulnerable expression, it would melt the heart of any normal man. But how could Xiao Shun be a normal man? He was the one I had carefully selected, the man in all of Great Liang least likely to fall for a beauty trap. Xiao Shun, the sixth son of the current emperor. And to date, the only imperial prince granted the title of prince. Rumors swirled that he was capricious and tyrannical, with a face like a demon and an aversion to women. It was even said he once personally crippled a palace maid who dared climb into his bed. Admittedly, such rumors held little credibility. Yet not a single court minister dared marry their daughter to him. But I'm different. I'm the only one scheming to marry him. Not for any other reason, but because of that phrase, beating a palace maid into crippling injury. When Suing declared her feelings to Xiao Shun once more, I hid behind the rockery, munching on shelled melon seeds while lowering my voice to whisper to Cui Ping behind me. "What do you think, in the match between Suing and Xiao Shun, who'll come out on top?" I was purely here for the spectacle. Such a grand show, free of charge, doesn't come around often. Cui Ping didn't answer, only silently stuffed another handful of melon seeds into my hand, muttering under her breath, "He's your future son-in-law. Yet you're so carefree." Carefree? What carefree? If Suing got the short end of the stick with Xiao Shun, everyone would be happy. If she succeeded, I'd just have to sacrifice myself and play the role of the matchmaker who breaks up the lovebirds. I was standing right here. Was I really going to be as foolish as in my past life, pleading for Suing to be made a secondary consort the very next day, all for the sake of the Su family's reputation? Naturally, I wouldn't be that foolish. I trust my own judgment. So I lowered my voice again. "Let's wager 2 taels of silver. I bet Xiao Shun won't take the bait." Cui Ping clearly had no sense of fun and refused to bet with me. But that didn't stop me from betting against myself. I resolved that if Suing succeeded as she had in my previous life, I would petition the emperor for a divorce tomorrow without hesitation. I would relinquish the title of principal consort to her, find a place to retire, and live out my days in peace. If Xiao Shun resisted the temptation, I would reluctantly settle the grievances I had endured in my past life. With this thought, I found myself intrigued, fixing my gaze on the 2 figures by the lake. I must admit, the rumors were truly biased. Xiao Shun was remarkably handsome. Perhaps inheriting his mother's Western region heritage, his features were far more profound than those of the men of my Great Liang. Draped in a crimson wedding robe, he appeared like an immortal descended from the heavens in the hazy moonlight. From this distance, I couldn't make out his expression. All I could see was his eyes fixed intently on Suing. Suing, too, wore a joyful expression, murmuring words of deep affection as she slowly drew closer to him. The gap between them narrowed until they were almost touching. Behind me, Cui Ping whispered urgently, "Miss, you're about to lose." I remained utterly unhurried, turning to gesture at her with my hand. "What's the rush? There's still some distance left. They haven't kissed yet." The words had barely left my mouth when a sudden splash echoed through the air. followed by a blood-curdling scream that shook the heavens. Ghost! Watching Xiao Shun scrambling frantically across the backyard and Suing struggling desperately in the lake, I froze momentarily before asking Cui Ping. What did I miss? Cui Ping replied expressionlessly. Oh, you missed the spectacle of the young master kicking the second young miss into the lake. Xiao Shun's shouts were loud, drawing a crowd of servants almost instantly. With so many people around, my tiny space was impossible to hide in. Even Xiao Shun spotted me and scrambled over. As if seeing a lifeline, he threw his arms around my neck and wailed. Quick, quick! A ghost! A female ghost who looks just like you. Me. Something felt off, not quite what I'd imagined. He was choking me, so I patted his hands until he finally got the hint and let go of my neck. But even then, he clung to my arms, too scared to let go. He seemed genuinely terrified, his lips pale with fright. I'm scared. He whimpered pitifully. I'm scared. Me. This Xiao Shun felt even more different from what I'd imagined. That pitiable look was exactly like Big Yellow, the dog I raised as a child who'd hide at my feet whenever he got scared. I couldn't help myself. I reached out and patted his head to comfort him. It's okay, it's okay. It's not a ghost. It's my half-sister. Only when Cui Ping leaned in and whispered a reminder did I snap back to reality. I had snapped out of it, but Xiao Shun hadn't. He was still lost in the words I'd spoken, then countered, Your half-sister? As he said this, his eyes widened slightly, his handsome brows knitting tightly together. It made me sigh inwardly. If not for all those rumors, he'd likely be the very image of the husband every noble lady in the capital dreamed of, wouldn't he? Alas, he had a sharp tongue. Sure enough, no sooner had I finished my thought than he lived up to my expectations, leaping forward to point at Suing in the lake and unleash a torrent of curses. Damn you! Playing ghostly tricks in the dead of night, have you had enough of living? After his tirade, he turned to me with pitiful eyes. Is she out of her mind? Watching the palace servants react with such familiarity, I finally understood where all those rumors about Xiao Shun came from. In the brief moment I stood stunned, the servants had already pulled Suing out of the water. The palace steward even kindly had someone bring her a blanket. Xiao Shun must have been furious, still ranting about killing Suing. The steward stepped in to reason with him. Your Highness, today is the joyous occasion of your wedding to the princess. Bloodshed is most unseemly. Those words seemed to cast a spell of paralysis on Xiao Shun. With half a sentence still stuck in his throat, he turned to me, his expression blank and slow, asking, Really? I nodded. I suppose so. His spirit deflated instantly, his face a mix of hurt and frustration. After a long pause, he finally frowned impatiently. Get rid of this troublesome thing immediately. Troublesome thing? My gaze fell upon Suing, wrapped in a quilt. That description was spot on. She was indeed quite troublesome. Naturally, I didn't send Suing away. Instead, I had someone go to the Su residence to fetch someone. In the dead of night, an unmarried woman, disheveled and half-dressed, being sent back to the Su residence in a Yuangfu carriage, who knew what rumors would spread by tomorrow? Perhaps black would be twisted into white, fulfilling Su Ying's wish. When Su Qingyun and Lady Qi arrived, Suing was still weeping. Only the location of her tears had shifted from the back courtyard to the front hall. Like Suing, Lady Qi hadn't even entered the door yet. Spotting Suing kneeling on the ground from afar, she began wiping away her own tears. Su Qingyun, however, maintained his composure. He glanced at Suing but didn't question her. Instead, he frowned and turned to me. What's going on here? Before I could speak, Suing piped up. She tugged at Su Qingyun's sleeve, her voice thin and trembling. It's all my fault. Don't blame the prince, father. Please don't ask anymore. Can we just go home? After speaking, she cast a tear-filled glance at Xiao Shun before quickly averting her eyes. She looked every inch the pitiful woman, defiled, yet still trying to save the other's face. Seeing her like this, how could Lady Qi possibly agree? She was clever enough not to confront Xiao Shun, instead turning her tear-filled gaze to me. Su Jiang, as Inger's elder sister, how could you tolerate your husband humiliating your own sister? Xiao Shun's fiery temper flared instantly. He slammed his fist hard on the table and erupted into a torrent of curses. I pounded his shoulder repeatedly, finally managing to restrain him. Suing likely didn't know I'd watched the entire scene from behind the rockery, still playing along with Lady Chi's script. "Mother, please stop. It's all my fault." To foster misunderstanding, she always favored this tactic, feigning weakness while leaving sentences unfinished, forcing others to speculate. Admittedly, this method worked. In my past life, I'd suffered countless hidden losses because of it. But some losses only need to be endured once. Watching the family of 3 before me, demanding an explanation, I couldn't help but curve my lips into a slow smile, shifting into a more comfortable sitting position. "Oh. You claim my prince bullied her? What? Shall I have His Highness take her as a concubine into the prince's mansion?" The moment the word concubine escaped my lips, Chi-Shi's expression shifted instantly. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she pointed at me, stammering for several moments, unable to form a complete sentence. Even Su Qingyun's expression darkened considerably. The word concubine had always been a thorn lodged in their throats. Years ago, Su Qingyun had abandoned Chi-Shi to marry my mother for his career advancement. Yet once his path to power was secured, he remained haunted by thoughts of Chi-Shi. Later, while my mother was heavily pregnant, he secretly conceived a child with Chi-Shi. Taking advantage of my maternal family's absence on the battlefield, leaving my mother defenseless, he sought to take Chi-Shi as his co-wife. My mother was no pushover. She used the Su family's reputation to persuade him, successfully dissuading Su Qingyun from taking a co-wife. But Chi-Shi was already carrying Su Qingyun's child. In the end, she was brought into the household as a concubine. Perhaps because of this, Su Qingyun showered Chi-Shi and her daughter with every conceivable indulgence. Though I was the legitimate daughter, my daily provisions fell short of Su Ying's in every way. Even so, Su Ying believed my mother and I had stolen what rightfully belonged to her and her daughter. Thus, over the years, she sought to outdo me in every possible way. I'm lazy by nature. Though I knew all this in my previous life, I refused to waste energy on such petty matters. Even the day after Su Ying climbed into Xiaoyan's bed, to avoid her coming after me, I directly suggested Xiaoyan make her a secondary consort. Yet, in her quest for favor, she still bribed the servants to lace my food with contraceptive herbs day after day. When Su Qingyun found out, he merely offered a flippant remark, "What does it matter if she bears no children? Your sister can conceive. As the principal consort, won't her offspring still call you mother? Treat that child as your own and cherish it." It was laughable how he could show such blatant favoritism toward his own daughter, despite sharing the same father. Sure enough, this time too, he unhesitatingly sided with Su Ying, pointing his finger at me and shouting, "She's your own sister. How could you make her a concubine? Our Su family has treated you well, how could we have raised such an ungrateful creature?" I raised an eyebrow at him. "Your Su family? If you hadn't said it, I'd have thought I bore the Song surname." He seemed to realize his slip, his expression shifting slightly, yet he stubbornly persisted, "All these years, I've treated you well." "Treated me well?" I burst out laughing in anger, cutting him off. "My mother had barely passed away when you banished me from the main courtyard as a child, forcing me into the woodshed. Is that treating me well? In the dead of winter, when even the servants had charcoal braziers, I had only coarse cloth to ward off the cold. Is that not treating me well? When my maternal grandfather sent money from afar through messengers, you appropriated it without a word, using it to buy finery for your concubine and beloved daughter. Is that not treating me well? You claim to treat me well? Then tell me, when I lay dying of illness at 10, did you ever come to see me? Did you add a single item to my wedding trousseau today? Should I thank you for your charity, feeding me scraps so I wouldn't starve?" Watching their faces turn ashen, I finally felt a surge of satisfaction, unable to suppress a smirk. "Oh, and by the way, serving as my prince's concubine wasn't my idea. It was your precious daughter behind you who volunteered herself for the bedchamber." Su Ying likely hadn't expected me to overhear her words. As soon as I spoke, she instinctively tried to protest. I didn't, but before her rebuttal could escape her lips, Xiao Shun beside me chimed in. "Dress like a female ghost in the dead of night, and you want to be this prince's concubine? Pa. Not even a dog would want you." His voice wasn't loud, but everyone present heard it clearly. Su Qingyun and Lady Qi's expressions were priceless, their faces alternating between crimson and ashen. Su Ying froze completely, her entire body stiffening. It seemed only now did she realize Xiao Shun was different from those men who fawned over her and lusted after her. He wasn't someone she could summon at will with a few sweet smiles or a flick of her fingers. Seeing her state, Su Qingyun and Lady Qi likely grasped what had transpired. The fierce, accusatory stance they'd held moments ago had vanished, leaving them as silent as gourd-mouthed fools. Lady Qi and Su Ying now wept, one sniffling and sobbing, the other silently shedding tears. Only Su Qingyun, after a moment of silence, suddenly softened his tone and addressed Xiao Shun. Though my daughter acted rashly today, she fell into the water at your residence and had her body seen. Your Highness, surely you must offer some explanation? Oh ho, was he now forcing Xiao Shun to take responsibility? Under normal circumstances, if Xiao Shun had simply denied everything, Su Qingyun would have prioritized Su Ying's reputation, refrained from publicizing the incident, and ultimately been powerless against Xiao Shun. But clearly, Xiao Shun was anything but normal. He frowned at Su Qingyun, then abruptly stood up and strode over. Before anyone could react, he swiftly pulled open Su Qingyun's robe. His movements were swift and decisive. By the time anyone could react, half of Su Qingyun's pale chest was exposed. A wave of gasps filled the room, while Xiao Shun merely shrugged innocently. I saw you too. Why not take you as my concubine? Su Qingyun was furious, pointing an accusing finger at Xiao Shun, wanting to curse but unable to. He could only glare at me, gnashing his teeth in a threat not to spread today's events and ruin Su Ying's reputation. Then he dragged Lady Qi and Su Ying away in a hurry. At his age, Su Qingyun had likely never suffered such a humiliation. Just recalling his expression, on the verge of fury-induced stupor, lifted my spirits immensely. Unable to resist, I ruffled Xiao Shun's hair again and praised, well done. Though he'd torn Su Qingyun's clothes apart without flinching moments ago, now he seemed to finally register what had happened, his face gradually flushing. His eyes were moist as he stared at me, his face brimming with expectation as he asked, did I really do well? That look practically screamed, tell me I'm great. A tingle fluttered in my heart. Strangely, I found this man, towering a full head above me, somehow endearing. Then, without thinking, I nodded. Yes. Well done. At my words, his eyes suddenly brightened. I couldn't fathom the leap in his thinking, but he stepped forward abruptly, capturing my hand in his. Rest assured. They treat you poorly, but I'll treat you well. From now on, consider this place your home. Whatever you want, just tell me. Seeing his earnest, unsmiling expression, my heart skipped 2 beats for no apparent reason. The rumors had deceived me. Xiao Shun truly meant what he said. Within less than half a month, he had filled my room with a mountain of things. Gold and silver jewelry, silk fabrics, anything he fancied was shoved into my quarters. Only, his taste in such things left much to be desired. Those gaudy, glittering ornaments were both ostentatious and impractical. And those bright red and green fabrics were so garish they made me cringe just looking at them. It took me ages of persuasion to finally dissuade him from buying more things. I couldn't tell if it was just my imagination, but ever since our wedding day, Xiao Shun seemed unusually affectionate toward me. As if we'd known each other for ages. Yet I was certain, whether in my past life or this one, we'd barely crossed paths beyond a few fleeting encounters at banquets. Doubts began to gnaw at me. Had I reincarnated only to lose more memories? Before I could make sense of it, rumors began circulating in the streets. Naturally, what spread wasn't that Su Ying had offered herself, but that I was arrogant and tyrannical, that on our wedding day, I had severed all ties with Su Qingyun as father and daughter. Su Ying had many close female friends, all daughters of Su Qingyun's colleagues in the court. As expected, within days, I received an oral reprimand from the palace and was confined to my quarters. I was fine with it, feeling nothing much. Xiao Shun, however, was nearly driven mad with rage, making several trips back and forth to the palace. I heard he caused a scene before the emperor, making the emperor so exasperated that he had no choice but to lift my confinement. Surprised, I finally couldn't hold back. At the dinner table, I stopped him and asked, "Have we met before?" The question wasn't difficult to answer. Yet he froze as if struck by lightning, his entire body suddenly stiffening. Even the piece of meat held between his chopsticks fell back into his bowl. He stared at me wide-eyed, not answering, but countering, "You've forgotten?" "Me, forgotten what?" Hearing my question, his chopsticks paused again, a fleeting emotion darting across his eyes. After a long moment, he muttered, setting down his bowl and chopsticks, "Forget it if you've forgotten. It's not important anyway." Though he said this, he left without finishing his meal, leaving me alone. I racked my brain but couldn't figure out what he meant by nothing important. Before I could find the answer, Chui Ping brought me some good news. She handed me a letter and whispered, "He said yes." After reading it, I set the letter ablaze and only then let a slow smile curve my lips. "Then we shall send him a grand gift first." The very next day after my confinement ended, a new rumor quietly began circulating in the streets. It claimed that back in the day, Su Qingyun and Lady Qi had been deeply in love, but it was the Song family's daughter who had driven them apart, breaking up a pair of lovers. It also claimed that I severed ties with the Su family because I never held any status there, unlike Su Ying, who was favored and cherished as Su Qingyun's prized jewel. This narrative of favoring the concubine's child over the legitimate heir naturally stirred discontent among some ministers. Yet family matters defy impartial judgment. Even when brought before the throne, the emperor merely issued a mild rebuke. On the 5th day of the rumor's peak circulation, I had Chui Ping orchestrate a chance encounter between Prince Xiaoyan of Huai and Su Ying. As expected, within days, Xiaoyan formally proposed marriage to the Su family. Chui Ping, unusually, voiced some discontent with my actions. "She slandered and defamed you. Why would you arrange such a favorable match for her?" She asked this as I lay in a rocking chair, eyes closed, enjoying the cool breeze. "Who says it must be a favorable match?" In my previous life, on the day of his wedding, Xiaoyan spent the night with Su Ying. After learning that Su Qingyun truly favored Su Ying, Xiaoyan tacitly approved of her underhanded schemes against me to curry favor with Su Qingyun. Later, he even used me as a pawn, orchestrating the annihilation of my maternal clan, the Song family, before sealing my fate with a cup of poison wine. Even now, I vividly recall the moment before my death in that past life, as he forced the poisoned wine into my mouth. He said, "Su Jiang, do you think I'm unaware of Su Ying's actions? Were it not for your remaining usefulness, a woman as utterly devoid of romantic sensibility as you would never have been wed to this prince. TSK. Nothing kills the spirit more than that." Though to this day, I still haven't figured out why I was granted a second life. But that doesn't stop me from settling the scores from my past life. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but sigh. Two grasshoppers tied to one string, one blast takes them both. So convenient. Xiaoyan and Su Ying's wedding came sooner than I'd anticipated, occurring around the same time as our marriage in my previous life. Not long after their ceremony, a major incident erupted within the court. Consecutive downpours had caused catastrophic flooding in Nanyu County, drowning hundreds. This marked the first such severe disaster the emperor had faced since ascending the throne. In my previous life, after the flood struck, several ministers led by Su Qingyun petitioned the emperor to dispatch Prince Yong, Xiaoju, to oversee relief efforts. Once Prince Yong departed, he never returned. Reflecting now, among all the princes, Xiaoju possessed the most outstanding abilities. Xiaoyan sought the crown prince's position. Xiaoju's death likely bore his hand. Yet in this lifetime, before news of Nanyu County's disaster reached the capital, Xiaoju fell ill. He lingered on his sickbed for dozens of days. Xiao Shun, who shared a close bond with him, visited once or twice bearing medicinal herbs. Sure enough, this time in the imperial court, no prince spoke up to lead the disaster relief efforts. Instead, the emperor heeded counsel and appointed Su Qingyun as imperial commissioner to oversee relief in Nanyu County. By the time he arrived, the floodwaters had receded, but plague was rampant, and rioters were seizing the chaos to cause unrest. News of these events trickled into the capital, heightening the already tense atmosphere within the city. Before news of Su Qingyun's relief efforts could return, the empress's birthday arrived. Devoutly Buddhist, she had no desire to hold a birthday banquet while the disaster relief efforts were still ongoing. Yet, for reasons unknown, Su Ying proposed using the occasion to solicit donations from court officials to be sent as relief funds to Nanyu County. It was a sound proposal. Unsurprisingly, the emperor and empress agreed. On the day of the banquet, the men's banquet was held in the Jade Branch Hall, while the women's banquet was set in the Imperial Garden. Xiao Shun and I parted ways. As soon as I entered the Imperial Garden, I spotted Su Ying, whom I hadn't seen in 2 months. Her face radiant, she was chatting and laughing animatedly with a group of noble ladies. The noble ladies, upon seeing me, began whispering among themselves. "Is that her? The one who severed ties with your father on her wedding day? Who knows what possessed His Royal Highness the Yu Prince to take a fancy to such a disobedient daughter?" Su Ying, of course, spotted me too. After exchanging a few words with the ladies, she rose and glided toward me. She reached out affectionately to take my hand, sweetly calling me sister. Our relationship had never been that close. With the lessons of my past life fresh in my mind, I knew exactly what she was up to. So, without betraying any emotion, I gave her a slight, forced smile. "Oh, isn't this the princess consort of Huai? What a coincidence." I deliberately hid my hand within my sleeve. Unable to grasp my hand, she settled for grabbing my wrist. "Sister, why so distant? We're family, could it be you've truly grown cold toward me?" Though her words were warm, her expression shifted subtly from the angle others couldn't see, revealing a hint of venom. She even whispered a taunt low enough for only us to hear. "Su Jiang, don't think leaving the Su family means you'll live in luxury. Everything that's yours, I'll take it all." With that, she yanked my arm violently, then let out a scream and collapsed backward. Su Ying had suffered a miscarriage. And to everyone else, it looked like I had pushed her. In my previous life, this trick of Su Ying's had caught me off guard, costing me dearly. This time around, watching her resort to the same trick, watching the noble ladies, just like last time, rush to the Empress Dowager to testify and accuse me. I found it amusing. I thought this, and indeed, I laughed out loud. "Mother, look at her. Even now, she shows no remorse." The speaker was the eldest princess, Xiao Wanning. In my previous life, when Su Ying targeted me, she was quick to join in the chorus. But the Empress did not rush to judgment based on her words. Instead, she lifted her gaze to me and asked, "Is what they say true?" I bowed respectfully before replying, "Your Majesty, all matters require evidence. These ladies claim I pushed the princess consort of Huai, but can they produce proof?" Xiao Wanning and the other noble ladies had likely never encountered someone as shameless as me. They all declared indignantly, "I saw it. I saw it too." Even Su Ying, who had suffered a miscarriage, endured the pain and was supported out from the rear hall. With tear-filled eyes, she confronted me, "Sister, we were once sisters. Why would you harm my child?" Su Ying clutched her abdomen, her tear-streaked face a pitiable sight. She could play the victim, so could I. I furrowed my brow slightly, sighed softly, then replied in a haunting tone, "I've said it before, everything requires proof. If you claim I pushed you, then produce evidence that I did." Su Ying's eyes turned crimson. "Sister, what kind of talk is this? Are you implying I would harm the imperial heir growing inside me? Me, who can say for certain?" My slightly arrogant retort clearly sent her blood boiling. Her body swayed twice, nearly toppling over. Barely steadied by others, she forced herself to kneel on the ground, tearfully pleading with the Empress. "I beg Mother to vindicate my unborn child." Having held the Empress's position for decades, she naturally wouldn't take sides or rush to conclusions in such a situation. She fixed her gaze on me and spoke slowly. "They all claim to have witnessed it, they are witnesses. You say it wasn't you. Do you have proof?" This was precisely the response I'd been waiting for. "Of course I do." I turned to Su Ying and asked softly, "You claim I pushed you. May I ask, which hand did I use?" My calm, unflappable demeanor clearly unsettled Su Ying. Yet she instinctively replied, "The right hand." "The right hand?" I chuckled softly, revealing the hand I'd concealed within my sleeve all along. Raising an eyebrow, I questioned Su Ying. "Well then, Princess Consort of Huai, explain this. If I pushed you with this hand, why isn't there even a fingerprint on your clothes?" At that moment, my once fair and smooth palm was covered in blistered burns, swollen beyond recognition. A layer of yellowish-brown medicinal powder coated the surface, occasionally oozing pus. Yet a mere light touch left a distinct, blood-stained handprint on the sleeve, mingled with the yellowish-brown powder. Such a sight was unheard of among these noble ladies. Instantly, some gagged, others gasped in horror. I slowly withdrew my hand back into my sleeve and explained to the Empress. I accidentally scalded myself 2 days ago. The physician said burns shouldn't be bandaged. I've kept it hidden all this time, fearing this appearance might offend the noble ladies. Then, turning to Su Ying, I mimicked her demeanor and feigned hurt. I wonder why the princess consort of Huai would slander me like this. Su Ying hadn't anticipated this turn of events. She seemed genuinely flustered, stammering, "No, no." Sister used her left hand. I must have misremembered. Oh, left hand? I raised an eyebrow, extending my left hand, which bore the exact same injury as my right, and countered, "You're not going to claim I pushed you without using my hands, are you?" The noble ladies present all hailed from distinguished aristocratic families. They had long been accustomed to the sordid affairs within grand mansions, let alone the empress confined deep within the palace. Almost without needing my explanation, everyone understood. The empress had never favored such scheming games. She merely declared, "Leave it to the imperial clan court to investigate," hastily ending this farce and dismissing the banquet. As we left the palace, Xiao Shun from the men's table had already heard about the incident. His features twisted in disgust, and he spoke without restraint. That ghostly, ugly woman, did she have her brain fried? Or did she soak it in ink? Her thoughts are so vile. If you ask me, she should be stuffed back into her mother's womb and properly remade. His protective words touched me, though I held back from asking. "Who taught you such foul language?" He blurted out, "The young Marquis of the Minyang Marquisate." "Why?" "Ah, the notorious playboy of the capital who loved mingling in the streets." "No wonder." Xiao Shun showed no awareness of whether his words were inappropriate, still chattering on. "Why must we run into such rotten luck the moment we enter the palace? This imperial court must clash with your destiny. We're never coming back." As if we could just decide not to come. I knew he was saying these things to soothe me. And I found his puffed up, indignant expression rather endearing. Just as I was about to tease him, the carriage abruptly halted. The driver whispered, "Your Highness, the princess." "It's His Highness Prince Huai." Xiao Shun clearly disliked Xiao Yun. He impatiently waved his hand. Go on, go on. Pretend you didn't see us." He wanted to leave, but Xiao Yun wasn't about to give him the chance. "Sixth brother, allow me to speak with the princess consort of you." The moment the words left his lips, the vein on Xiao Shun's forehead throbbed. "My princess consort? You think I'd just let you talk to her? Dream on." If I hadn't held him back, he would have charged out to punch Xiao Yun. Honestly, I had nothing to say to that troublesome piece of work, Xiao Yun. The memory of him feeding me poisoned wine in my past life was still vivid. I feared that seeing that revolting face would make me lose control and stab him dead. So, speaking coldly through the carriage curtain, I said, "Your Highness, Prince of Huai, if it's not important, perhaps it's best left unsaid. I fear my lord might misunderstand." These words both refused Xiao Yun and soothed Xiao Shun. Sure enough, the moment the words left my mouth, Xiao Shun's expression visibly softened. He even cracked a silly grin, letting out a couple of he-he chuckles, radiating pure, simple-minded charm. My words were blunt, and Xiao Yun didn't press the matter, merely letting out a light chuckle. "Oh. It seems my sixth brother has truly married a fine bride." I smiled too, my words carrying a double meaning. "But yours is even better." The case of suing plotting against the imperial heir and framing me with the heir's body had been handed over to the imperial clan court for investigation. Yet its severity hinged entirely on how it was handled. Su Qingyun, the chief minister and imperial commissioner, was currently overseas overseeing disaster relief efforts for the emperor. Should he succeed in his mission, Xiao Yun might drop the matter entirely, turning a major scandal into a minor incident. Not only I, but Su Ying and Lady Qi understood this logic. Thus, on the very morning after Su Ying was escorted into the imperial clan court, a swift horse galloped out of the Su residence and vanished beyond the city gates. But I knew Su Qingyun all too well. He was a greedy man. Years ago, to climb the ranks, he had abandoned Lady Qi, the woman he'd vowed to grow old with. After years in office, the bribes he'd secretly accepted were beyond count. How could he possibly remain unmoved, untouched by temptation, while carrying such a large sum of disaster relief silver? Sure enough, before Lady Qi and Su Ying's distress letters could be delivered, the emperor received a blood-stained petition from Nanyu County. The letter stated that villagers had discovered the river embankment, which should have been reinforced with stone slabs and lime, had turned into quicksand. When the people went to the county office to beat the drum demanding a thorough investigation, Su Qinyun had them suppressed as rioters. After the flood, plagues raged relentlessly. Yet instead of aiding the suffering populace, Su Qinyun sent those in the early stages of infection, who still had a glimmer of hope, into quarantine villages and burned them alive. Amid the inferno, earth-shattering cries filled the air. All victims were subjects of the Great Liang. The letter detailed atrocity upon atrocity, too numerous to record, each word written in blood. The informant who delivered the letter even claimed many others like him had traveled thousands of miles to the capital bearing similar blood-stained petitions. Yet all were captured by Su Qinyun and executed. After delivering his blood-stained letter, that man too perished at the palace gates. Admittedly, the letter contained elements of exaggeration. Yet the emperor still flew into a rage, ordering the Supreme Court to investigate thoroughly. The Supreme Court moved swiftly. Before Su Qinyun could return from disaster relief, all evidence of his embezzlement and disregard for human life was laid bare upon the emperor's dragon-carved desk. Within 3 days, the truth was laid bare. Su Ying had plotted to harm the imperial heir, attempting to frame me using the child she carried. It even surfaced that she had secretly pledged herself to a disciple of the Su household, conceiving his child. On my wedding day, she used secret potions and incense to seduce Xiao Shun. When Cui Ping brought back these revelations, Xiao Shun was swearing to heaven before me. Even if I were under the influence of that so-called incense, I could never have been seduced by her. This, of course, I knew well. After all, no man would mistake a beauty for a female ghost. Nor could any man kick a half-naked woman who throws herself into his arms into the lake. Watching Xiao Shun, his expression earnest, fearing I might misunderstand, explaining incessantly, I felt inexplicably pleased. Perhaps it was because we'd spent more time together lately, but I increasingly felt he was very different from the rumors. Probably because his mother was a beauty brought as tribute from the western regions, his status was unique. So even though he was favored, he had never been considered a candidate for the crown prince since childhood. Perhaps precisely because no one taught him the ways of an emperor or the affairs of state, he had developed his current free-spirited nature. I found nothing objectionable about his carefree disposition. Especially when, though clearly angry, he furrowed his brow and asked me with genuine concern, "With the Su family's downfall, will you be implicated?" I couldn't help but laugh, feeling more certain than ever that I hadn't married the wrong man. "Don't worry," I soothed him gently, "I'll be fine. After all, I severed ties with the Su family on my wedding day, didn't I?" Su Ying probably never imagined that the slanderous rumors she spread about me would, at this very moment, save me a great deal of trouble. Nor did I expect that while I thought Su Ying was merely trying to seize my possessions, she was also involved in an illicit affair. Back then, she dismissed all attendants, wearing a victorious smile as she looked down on me with contemptuous words. "Su Jiang, so what if you're the principal consort? You're still locked up here like a dog." She said, "Yes, I framed you on purpose. But what can you do? You have no proof." Now, it was my turn to see her. I had intended to vent my fury, just as she had mocked me in my previous life. But gazing upon her bloodless face, I suddenly found it all rather pointless. She, however, upon seeing me, seemed to have encountered her mortal enemy. Her eyes bulged as she screamed at me. "Su Jiang! It's all your fault! You're the one who ruined me like this. Why should you? Everything you have should have been mine. Your mother's position as the legitimate wife, your status as the legitimate daughter, and everything else, it all should have been mine. I'm just taking back what's rightfully mine." These very words were spoken to me by her in my previous life, just before I died. But back then, she had Su Qinyun's backing and enjoyed Xiao Yun's favor, radiating confidence. Not like now, looking like a madwoman. I frowned and shook my head. TSK. Pity. Perhaps she'd rather be mocked by me than hear those two words from my mouth. She truly went berserk, lunging at me, trying to choke my neck. But just then, the door behind us burst open with a kick. "How long do you intend to make a scene?" At the sound of Xiaoyun's voice, Suing froze in place, as if struck by lightning. I wasn't surprised at all that Xiaoyun had come bearing poisoned wine and white silk. The imperial family's reputation must never be tarnished. Suing had consorted with others, schemed to seduce a prince, and successfully wed into the royal household, nothing short of smearing ink across the imperial family's face. Xiaoyun had always been this way, ruthless in achieving his goals, yet intolerant of useless people around him. The Su family was collapsing, and Suing had no chance of survival. This was the first time I'd seen him since my rebirth. His appearance hadn't changed much from my previous life. Still, looking at him made one want to punch him. When he saw me, a flicker of emotion darted through his eyes before he turned his expressionless gaze back to Suing. Though Suing was foolish, she wasn't so foolish as to not understand the situation upon seeing the poisoned wine and white silk. Facing death, fear finally gripped her, and she begged for mercy incessantly. Even after I left the ancestral hall, her shrill cries still echoed. When Xiaoyun rushed out, Su Ying's curses hadn't ceased. Cui Ping, unusually, sighed. She brought this upon herself. The words had barely left her lips when I heard Xiaoyun's voice. Wait. I had no desire to wait, but his strides were swift. In a few quick steps, he blocked my path ahead. Though irritated, now was not the time to sever ties with him. I could only offer a faint, strained smile. Is there something else, Your Highness? Xiaoyun remained silent, his gaze fixed on me, his eyes unreadable. After a long moment, he finally asked, Su Jiang, have we met somewhere before? His question came so abruptly it startled me. Why do you say that, Your Highness? Xiaoyun's gaze remained fixed on me. You just seem familiar. I really didn't want to engage in small talk with him on the street. I took a step back to create some distance. With so many banquets in the capital, it's hardly unusual to have crossed paths once or twice. And for the sake of propriety, Your Highness should address me as the princess consort of you or sister-in-law. Having said this, I didn't wait for his reaction. Instead, I took Cui Ping and climbed into the carriage. Yet even after moving some distance away, separated by the carriage's frame, I could still feel his gaze piercing like a blade. That look, I knew it all too well. In my previous life, when he deceived me into carrying a forged imperial edict to the border and saw me off from the capital, he had looked at me with precisely that expression. The thought of my maternal grandfather bearing the shame of a traitor and being beheaded because of that fake edict made my forehead throb. I couldn't help but scheme silently. Now that Suing was dead, no matter how much Su Qingyun struggled, he couldn't pull off any tricks. Once the Su family fell, the political winds in court would shift instantly. Those ministers who had secretly backed Xiaoyun alongside the Su family would gradually quiet down. Even Xiaoyun himself would inevitably become much more subdued. He wanted to bide his time, plotting slowly. But how could I possibly let him have his way? If he won't move, why not force him to? With that thought, I gently rubbed my temples and instructed Cui Ping. Send word to that person. Advance the plan. As autumn arrived, the commander stationed at Lanyu Pass discovered Chang forces quietly gathering troops along the border. After several skirmishes, they found a letter bearing the seal of Prince Xiaoyun of Huai within the enemy commander's camp. The news sent shockwaves through the imperial court. Naturally, the letter was forged. The seal bearing the pattern I had imprinted from my past life's memories was the key. Though the letter itself was a fabrication, the secret correspondence between Xiaoyun and the eldest prince of Chang over the past years was undeniably real. The envoy dispatched to Chang had barely stated his purpose when the crown prince of Chang voluntarily surrendered all the exchanged correspondence. After all, compared to collaborating with a Liang prince, it was uncertain whether such a partnership could yield stable benefits. During Liang's internal turmoil, they preferred to stir the muddy waters, reaping the rewards of chaos. When the evidence reached the capital, the emperor fainted from shock before rendering any judgment. Amidst the chaos, Xiaoyun seized the opportunity to flee. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival. The emperor lay unconscious, and the Prince of Huai had vanished without a trace. Panic gripped the entire capital. Only Xiao Shun, with his simple, uncomplicated mind, insisted on dragging me to the annual mid-autumn night market. I couldn't refuse and had to accompany him. While the imperial court was engulfed in bloodshed, the common folk remained largely unaffected. The night market was bustling with excitement, teeming with people so densely packed that the path ahead was obscured. The crowd was overwhelming, and I had originally grabbed Xiao Shun's sleeve to avoid getting separated. Unexpectedly, in the next instant, his large, warm hand enveloped mine. He pointed to a nearby stall selling candied hawthorn on a stick and asked, "That looks good. Shall we get a skewer?" Yet his tone was entirely unlike his usual self. As we drew closer, I could even feel the stiffness radiating from his wrist up his arm and the hand that held mine. I found it rather amusing. Though we'd been married for so long, for reasons unknown, he'd never consummated our union. Yet as a prince, he should have had numerous concubines by now. Instead, he acted like a clueless youth holding a girl's hand for the first time. Lost in this thought, I couldn't help but chuckle softly. "All right," I nodded. "If you like them, we'll buy several strings." I couldn't tell which nerve that remark had struck. His body stiffened slightly, and he abruptly let go of my hand. "Fine. Wait here. I'll go buy them." Then, his ears flushed, he shuffled awkwardly toward the candied hawthorn stall. I wanted to warn him, but before I could call out, a figure flashed before me, blocking my view. Next, my nose and mouth were suddenly covered, and a heavy blow struck my neck. Before I could react, darkness engulfed my vision, and I lost consciousness completely. When I awoke, my hands and feet were bound. My eyes were covered with a black cloth. Though I couldn't see, I could hear, besides my own, another person's breathing. I hardly needed to guess who it was. Prince Huai's hospitality is truly remarkable. Having my identity guessed, Xiaoyan saw no point in hiding it. He removed the blindfold from my eyes and gave me a crooked smile. "I never expected the princess consort of you to be so perceptive. I underestimated you." I smiled back at him. I never expected His Royal Highness the Prince of Huai to resort to such despicable tactics. "I underestimated you too." I showed no fear, which seemed to surprise him. "Does the princess of you not wonder why I sought you out?" I raised an eyebrow in return. "Is it not that your highness intends to use me to blackmail Xiao Shun, forcing him to aid your bid for the throne?" Xiaoyan seemed amused by my question. He clutched his stomach, laughing for a long moment before suddenly asking, "Do you know? Just the other day, I had a dream." My eyelid twitched involuntarily. Instinctively, I guessed what he was about to say. "Sure enough," he continued, "in that dream, my fourth brother died in a disaster relief riot, and my fifth brother was stripped of his power for illegally mobilizing troops. And you married me, becoming my official consort." My heart skipped 2 beats. After a long moment, I heard my own slightly parched voice. "It was just a dream. Surely your highness, the Prince of Huai, didn't take it seriously?" He didn't answer. Instead, he slowly curved his lips, raised an eyebrow, and asked me, "Oh? Was it really just a dream?" Xiaoyan clearly didn't believe it was merely a simple dream. He rose and began pacing slowly, circling me twice. At first, I thought it was merely a dream too. But it felt so real, so utterly real, that I couldn't help but question what was reality and what was dream. As he spoke, he suddenly crouched down, his gaze fixed intensely on me. "Do you know? I could have ascended to the supreme throne. But now, I'm forced to hide and flee, reduced to this. I suspected my fourth brother, then my fifth. But after much thought, I realized I'd overlooked you, the one whose path diverged completely from mine in my dreams." My heart tightened slightly, yet I remained composed as I asked, "Oh? What was I like in Prince Huai's dreams?" "You?" He suddenly curved his lips, reaching out to gently trace my cheek. "In my dreams, you are my rightful consort. We are deeply devoted, ultimately ascending together to the imperial throne." I raised an eyebrow at him, my expression unreadable. "So, simply because I married His Highness the Yu Prince, you suspect I'm the one who brought you to this ruin?" He suddenly curved his lips, his reply flawless. "You alone? If I'm not mistaken, there's someone else behind you." Though he didn't answer directly, I knew he'd guessed correctly. He suspected I'd conspired with someone to disrupt his plans. But he remained uncertain whether I, like him, knew the trajectory of our past lives. So he was testing me. Testing whether I retained memories of my previous existence. I'd been somewhat nervous, but now that I understood his reason for capturing me, I felt a wave of relief. I raised an eyebrow and smiled at him. Since you know, bringing me here can't just be to listen to your mystifying tales, can it? Sure enough, his eyes narrowed at my words. Oh. So the person behind you, is it fourth brother? Or fifth brother? My smile remained unbroken. You guess. Xiao Shun wasn't stupid. In an instant, he saw through my intent. He snorted derisively. Trying to stall for time, waiting for someone to rescue you? Seeing my silent acknowledgement, he actually laughed out loud. That simple-minded fool Xiao Shun was lured away long ago. Do you really expect him to save you? I smiled back at him. You said it yourself, there is someone behind me. Given that, why would you assume I'm waiting for Xiao Shun? As if to prove my point, the moment the words left my mouth, the clang of metal clashing echoed from outside. Immediately after, Xiao Ju's voice rang out. Third brother, mother said that if you confess everything, she will plead your case to father. By the time Xiao Ju and his men burst in, Xiao Yun's sword was already pressed against my throat. The two brothers finally tore away their false brotherly affection, facing each other coldly. Xiao Yun sneered, so it was you? When did fourth brother and the princess of you become so close? Of course, he didn't know. Before my grandfather was beheaded in my previous life, he had sighed to me. Prince Xiao Yun of Huai is narrow-minded. To seize the throne, he will never spare Prince Qi. Though talented, his methods are ruthless, he is no choice for a wise ruler. Alas, Prince Qi harbors no ambition for the throne. Had Prince Yong still lived, he would have been the most suitable candidate. Only then did I grasp Xiao Yun's ambition. Thus, on my first day after rebirth, I secretly infiltrated the Yong prince's residence and forged an alliance with Prince Yong, Xiao Ju. He entered the palace to intercede, facilitating my marriage to Xiao Shun. I plotted on his behalf, severing Xiao Yun's crucial support from the Su clan. Having lived through the previous life, I knew well that Xiao Yun had no maternal clan to rely on. He had only gradually secured his foothold in the court by leaning on the Su family. But Su Qingyun was, by nature, a greedy quagmire. Xiao Yun sought to climb to the heavens by clinging to Su Qingyun, only to be dragged down into the mire alongside him. This time around, I was prepared. I had my maternal grandfather send over his most capable disciple, Cui Ping. Cui Ping was meticulous in thought and formidable in skill. Xiao Yun believed he had snatched me from the marketplace without anyone noticing. In truth, Cui Ping had seen everything. She had even secretly followed him, discovered his hiding place, and sent word to Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju's arrival to apprehend Xiao Yun came as no surprise to me. Xiao Yun, however, seemed unable to accept it, his voice dark as he demanded, "Why must it be you? Since childhood, father has favored you, doted on you. Why must every advantage be yours?" He even leaned close to my ear, his teeth clenched as he demanded, "Why must even you choose him?" This was the first time in my 2 lifetimes that I had seen Xiao Yun so utterly unhinged. His tone grew increasingly agitated, his hands trembling slightly. A mere slight pressure could have slit my throat. Yet I felt no fear. Instead, I raised an eyebrow and asked him, "Since you had that dream, you should know exactly why." Xiao Shun froze upon hearing this. "What did you say? You mean that dream of mine was?" I curved my lips slowly. "Exactly. Everything in your dream actually happened. In my previous life, Prince Yong, Xiao Ju, died suddenly. After his death, the only figure Xiao Yun truly feared was Prince Qi, who, alongside my maternal grandfather, commanded 100,000 troops along the distant Shirong frontier. Thus, that autumn when Suing framed me, the Chang kingdom simultaneously launched a rebellion at Lanyu Pass. When news of my maternal grandfather's critical illness reached the capital, I was restless. I pleaded with Xiao Yun to let me travel to the western Rhone border to visit him. To my surprise, he readily agreed. He even thoughtfully arranged for me to accompany the imperial messenger tasked with ordering reinforcements to Lanyu Pass. At that time, I never imagined that the imperial decree and that messenger were traps Xiaoyun had set for me. Only after my maternal grandfather and the Chang forces withdrew, and the emperor's indictment arrived, did I realize I had been used. My grandfather would never suspect me, and Prince Qi would never suspect my grandfather. Xiaoyun exploited this very fact to eliminate the sole obstacle to his ascension as crown prince. Mobilizing troops without imperial decree was a capital offense punishable by the execution of 9 generations. Though Prince Qi was stripped of his military authority and spared death, as the commander of my maternal grandfather's forces, he had no chance of escape. By then, the false imperial messenger had long hanged himself at home, leaving only a suicide note implicating me. I had no defense, no avenue for redress. I could only watch helplessly as my maternal family was led out through the Meridian Gate to be beheaded. As for me, Xiaoyun forced me to drink a cup of poisoned wine, ending my life. Whether this is a dream or rebirth, Xiaoyun must surely know these things. In an instant, he realized everything, his teeth clenched as he demanded, "So it was you? You approached fourth brother, scheming together to send Su Qingyun on the disaster relief mission, all to destroy the Su family. And it was you who framed me for communicating with the Chang prince, driving me to this desperate end." People lose focus when overcome by emotion. I intended to seize his distraction to escape, so I offered no denial. "Correct." Sure enough, his voice faltered the next moment. "I should have seen it coming. I should have guessed it was you. Third brother." Xiaoju likely intended to urge him to calm down. But his words only seemed to enrage Xiaoyun. He jerked the sword forward, its edge pressing against my throat, drawing a thin trail of blood. Xiaoju froze instantly. As for Xiaoyun, whether provoked by my words or not, his speech began to falter. "It should be you who dies. Fourth brother. Fifth brother. You all. I am the crown prince. I am the emperor." With every word, the sword in his hand trembled. "Since that's the case, let us die together. Perhaps death will allow us to start anew." He tightened his grip, preparing to slit my throat. At the critical moment, an arrow whistled through the air from outside, striking his arm with pinpoint accuracy. The pain instantly drained his strength. Seizing the chance, I shoved him hard with my backhand, sending him crashing into Xiaoju's encircling grasp. Only then did my taut nerves slowly relax. I glanced toward the direction the arrow had come from. What met my eyes was Xiao Shun, his expression savage and bloodthirsty, eyes crimson, his bow drawn, aimed squarely at Xiaoyun's heart. Xiao Shun's second arrow struck Xiaoyun's chest, nearly taking his life. Fortunately, he survived. Forcibly rescued, he was taken to the Ministry of Justice, awaiting the emperor's decision upon his awakening. With the situation settled, Xiaoju gradually became a frequent visitor to the Yu prince's residence. Everything seemed to have calmed down. Except for Xiao Shun. After saving me that day, he hadn't spoken to me for an entire month. Whether I asked questions, played the victim, or tried every trick to amuse him, he never uttered a single word. His face remained expressionless, not even granting me a glance. This was the first time I'd ever faced such a situation, and I was utterly at a loss. Xiaoju couldn't bear to watch any longer. Whether out of persuasion or frustration, he finally spoke. "Since sixth brother dislikes his sixth sister-in-law, perhaps I should take matters into my own hands and petition mother to grant your divorce." Only then did his expression finally shift. Late at night, he slipped quietly into my room. He entered without a sound, ghostly silent, crouching in the corner, his eyes fixed on me. Deep in sleep, I felt an eerie chill down my spine. Opening my eyes, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Even then, he stared back at me expressionless, not uttering a single word. Faced with this situation, having lived 2 lifetimes, I felt powerless for the first time. I couldn't help but sigh and ask, "What exactly are you angry about?" He finally spoke. "You clearly love fourth brother. Why did you marry me?" I froze, equally puzzled. When did I ever harbor feelings for His Highness the Prince of Yong? If you don't like him, why did you help him? Why did Cui Ping relay the message to him first instead of me? Do you realize that if I'd been a moment later, I might never have seen you again? Though his words were accusatory, coming from him, they carried a hint of hurt and resentment. Somehow, an image suddenly flashed through my mind, the look on his face that day when he drew his bow. Back then, he truly seemed intent on killing Xiaoyun. His eyes, bloodshot and fierce, resembled a demon from hell, perfectly matching the brutal, bloodthirsty descriptions in the rumors. Yet, whenever I recalled that he'd taken on that terrifying form simply because, as he'd said, he feared never seeing me again, my chest couldn't help but soften, and even my tone grew gentler as I spoke. If I truly desired him, why would I marry you? This question seemed to stump him. He paused slightly, then circled back to the original point. Exactly. You've even forgotten that childhood promise to marry me. Why would you still choose me? Yes, I clearly. My words slipped out before I caught myself, and I frowned slightly. When did I ever say that as a child? Before I could finish, fragments of memory suddenly surfaced in my mind. I paused, vaguely recalling that I probably had said it. It was on New Year's Eve, the year after my mother passed away, when I was 8. That year, after being driven out of the main courtyard by the Chi family in Suing, I moved into the woodshed. For a time after that, they seemed to have forgotten I existed. Even on New Year's Eve, no one came to call me for the festive dinner. Perhaps the sight of their joyful reunion was too painful to bear. Unable to watch, I slipped 2 copper coins into my pocket and quietly slipped out of the estate. That night, the night market in the capital was exceptionally bustling. The crowds were so dense that I didn't even notice when my money pouch was stolen. It wasn't until I stood before the candied hawthorn stall and realized my last 2 copper coins were gone that I finally understood. The bright red candied hawthorns truly were beautiful. When my mother was alive, she often bought a few strings. She always coaxed me to eat them, but I never liked the sour taste of the candied hawthorn berries. Truthfully, not getting any didn't bother me much, I never really wanted them anyway. Just as I was about to apologize to the vendor, a young voice spoke beside me. You've been standing there a while. Do you like them? I looked up and saw a youth in fine robes beside me. His eyes were striking, ink black with a hint of blue. His features didn't quite match those of the people of Daliang, making me wary. I stared blankly at him, saying nothing. Seeing my silence, he thought I hadn't heard and asked again, Do you like them? I can buy you a string. I shook my head. My mother likes them. He asked again, Where is your mother? My mother is dead. After I said this, the youth visibly froze. He seemed to have touched a raw nerve. After a long moment, he awkwardly mumbled, I'm sorry. At that moment, perhaps because his expression was so sincere, I unconsciously let down my guard and shook my head at him. It's okay. Perhaps still feeling remorseful, the boy's tone grew unexpectedly bold. Then tell me, what do you want? Anything I can afford, I'll buy for you. The young me pondered only briefly before replying, Then could you give me a husband? Back then, I didn't really know what a husband was. But still, under his slightly surprised gaze, I explained earnestly, My mother said the hardest thing to find in this world is a good husband. I want a good husband. Can you give me one? He seemed troubled, scratching his head. That probably won't work. But seeing my disappointed expression, he quickly changed his mind, But when you grow up, you can marry me. I should be able to be a good husband. Perhaps it was his tone, too sincere, or perhaps the boy's smile was too intoxicating. Without a second thought, I agreed. Okay. That night, after the boy escorted me back to the rear gate of the Su residence, as we parted, he seemed to say something, urging me to remember his words. But at that moment, Mrs. Chi was waiting at the back gate. The instant she saw me, she erupted into a torrent of curses. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't make out a single word the boy had said. Life carried on. That chance encounter in my youth, that exchange not even worthy of being called a promise, I never gave it much thought. As I grew older, I even forgot the boy I'd met that night. Yet, unexpectedly, he had never forgotten. The dejected expression on Xiao Shun's face now gradually overlapped with the memory of that youth. I couldn't help but soften inside, a stinging sensation rising in my nose. Not wanting him to notice my change, and without waiting for his reaction, I shifted over on the bed and patted the empty spot beside me. Come up first. He seemed somewhat tempted, but after taking 2 steps forward, he stopped, hesitation etched on his face. I didn't urge him, simply lying down myself. After a long while, I finally felt the mattress beside me give slightly. Feeling the warmth beside me, his body deliberately keeping distance, slightly stiff, my heart grew softer and softer. Finally, I couldn't hold back. I turned and placed a light kiss on his forehead, then nestled into his embrace. I'm sorry. My voice was very soft. For forgetting him. And for not considering his feelings. He didn't respond for a long while. Just as I thought he hadn't heard, he suddenly wrapped his arms tightly around me. Then came his slightly domineering mutter. This time I'll let it slide. But don't make it a habit. You're marrying me, so you're mine. I snuggled deeper into his embrace, slowly curving my lips into a smile and nodding in agreement. Okay. The end.